And this is Dr. Chris's Radio Horror Show on 91.3 FM, WCUW in Worcester, Massachusetts. And if you're not listening to us on 91.3 FM on the dial, you are hopefully checking us out on VidMe and Radio Horror's YouTube page. And with me is my amazing singer-songwriter co-host,
Jess-O-Lantern.
Yes.
Hi, everybody.
And tonight we are talking about one of our favorite writers of all time, who Jess is extremely passionate about, as I am. The one and only, one of the greatest writers of our generation, who has been on The Simpsons too, by the way, and who's just released a new book and has a TV series coming out based on one of his best-selling novels, American Gods, debuting on Starz April 30th. Neil Gaiman is the topic of discussion tonight. I've been such a huge Neil Gaiman fan, and the Simpsons episode I reference is. Have you ever seen that one, Jess?
It's adorable.
It's so funny when they. For anyone who hasn't seen it, long story short, is some people in Springfield, including Homer, try to create a brand new book that's like Twilight, and they get the idea from Neil Gaiman, who gives them suggestions, and Homer says, "Hey, I think British Fawns has a good idea."
Oy vey.
That is the funniest part, when he calls them British fawns. And then later on in the episode, Neil Gaiman scolds them for being such complete idiots about their Twilight-esque book. But that was not how I was introduced to Neil Gaiman. How were you introduced to Neil Gaiman, Jess? And then I'll get to mine.
It's funny because I was apparently a fan of him before even realizing that he was who he was. Because I was obviously exposed to things like Coraline when it was still in a book form. I don't remember much about being able to read it when I was younger, but I didn't know that it was him because I was a kid. When I first, as an adult, heard his name, it was when I was working at Halloween Horror Nights in Orlando, and there was word that he was out in the park. And he was just attending the festival or whatever, and
as you do, yes,
yeah, going to the different haunts and stuff and enjoying the night. And so we were we didn't know where he was, but somebody texted, Neil Gaiman just went through my house, and we're like, oh man! So now everybody was working on the haunts and in the street, everybody backstage is all freaking out, going, oh man, where is he gonna be next? But we get a lot of celebrities that went through Halloween Horror Nights. I've scared Dee Snider. Hulk Hogan came through with his daughter. When we had the Freddy, Jason, and Leatherface icons, Robert Englund went through the Freddy house and shook everyone's hands. We've had some pretty cool Halloween Horror Nights celebrity experiences. But for me, when Neil Gaiman came through, and I, wasn't really all too familiar, but I knew what he looked like.
Uh-huh.
I had never met him before, put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
He came through when I was out in my scare zone, which is kind of like an outdoor haunted house.
Mm-hmm.
And he came through and went right next to me and was he stopped directly in front of me, had his back turned to me, and he was talking to somebody or whatever. And my castmate runs up to me and she goes, oh my God, that's Neil Gaiman. Oh man, what are we going to do? And I'm like, our jobs, we're going to scare him.
Jess was very professional about this.
Of course.
Compose yourself, Jess. Your moment is coming.
Yeah, so I snuck up behind him and whispered in his ear, because firstly, I was Little Bo Peep at that point. I was dressed in period costume, Little Bo Peep, covered in blood, and I had a Little Bo Peep staff, the little sheep stick or whatever, and it had pieces of mangled sheep on it, pieces of bloodied, ripped up sheep.
Hold on. Wait, stop. Do you have a picture of this, by the way? Because we are posting, and if you are listeing to this, there should be a picture in this video.
Yeah, it's on my Facebook. I'll have to post that too. I forgot to send it to you. I'm covered in, I'm wearing a pink and gingham. It's such a horribly tacky, but fits the period
picture.
Costume. It's hilarious. But anyway, regardless,
Okay,
I go up
sorry.
and I sneak up behind him and I whisper in his ear in his creepy, and I was this Cockney accent or whatever. I was like, tell me a story, Mr. Gaiman. And he jumped. And it was just so funny because we were able to talk, as our characters, and I got to talk to a lot of people every single night, but that one was the highlight of my night and the highlight of my run, apparently. But he's just like, he got scared, his friends got scared, they all had a nice laugh, and then they kept walking, and I thought that was going to be the end of it. And then about 2 or 3 years later, go to a performance that his wife, Amanda Palmer, who I am a mega fan of, Amanda Palmer was doing a performance, and they were doing a book signing of the book that they did together, Who Killed Amanda Palmer, for her album. Mm-hmm. And in the signing line, I'm like talking to my friend in line about the story, and he hears me talking about the story, and then he looks up at me and goes, "Oh no, oh no."
Oh, he remembered you.
He remembered, and I'm like, what? And like later on, he even tweeted about like seeing me in a less terrifying circumstance, and I just thought that was so sweet. Like he actually remembered Little Bo Peep scaring him like several years ago.
Wow.
But anyway, that whole spiel is my introduction to him was first scaring him, and then once I scared him and I told my castmates about the story, they're like, "Oh my God, you have to read this, and this," and I just absolutely fell in love with his work. And the funniest thing was that like in that time frame between when I scared him and when I saw him again, I like became a super fan, and it was just funny because had I been that mega fan, I don't think I would have had the balls to go up and do that and, like, scare him in his ear. I would have been a little too, starstruck at that point had I not.
His wife, as you said, is Amanda. You love his wife, Amanda Palmer, but she's also known as Amanda fucking Palmer. I just saw that online.
Well, yeah. Yeah, amongst friends, definitely.
Do you know where Amanda Palmer is from, by the way?
Boston,
Massachusetts, where we do Radio Horror. Well, we do Radio Horror Worcester, but still, it's kind of Boston, Massachusetts.
Yeah. It's where the Dresden Dolls were based and formed. So yeah, around Boston. Yeah.
Speaking of like his weird animated appearances, you're familiar with the films of Kevin Smith, right?
Of course.
There was an amazing Kevin Smith movie which is still not released yet for whatever reason, and I can't find any information about why Kevin has not put it out on DVD or Blu-ray yet. Jay and Silent Bob's super groovy cartoon movie where they play their characters Bluntman and Chronic from the Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back and the Bluntman and Chronic comic book series. They made an entire animated movie about it with them voicing it. Neil Gaiman plays their Alfred gay manservant.
Wow.
Which I remember watching an episode of Fat Man on Batman, which is Kevin Smith's insanely popular podcast, where he had Neil Gaiman on it, and Neil Gaiman agreed to whatever script Kevin wrote, and Kevin wanted to write it as like a gay British manservant, and Neil Gaiman read it like that. Knowing he has an insane sense of humor, because Kevin Smith's stuff is just so out there weird with like, he just, he'll write what he wants to write, and, it gets made. And he's, been around in geekdom so long that he can get anybody to read for him or be in his movies. And he got Neil Gaiman to play a ridiculous manservant.
He's definitely prevalent in the geekdom town. I mean, he wrote several episodes. I can't remember the title. But he writes for Doctor Who.
Yes, he wrote the Doctor's Wife, where the TARDIS turns into a real woman.
Oh, yeah, that's one. I love that episode, too.
Yeah, who plays the TARDIS in that?
I don't remember. I'm terrible with names.
Yeah, someone said that's Helen Bonham Carter, and I was like, no, it's not. Is it? Wait, I don't know.
It might be.
It looks like
it. That's an IMDb Google question.
Yeah, we'll get back to that later on in our recordings and our loves of Neil Gaiman. But there's speaking of the first time that I ever was introduced to Neil Gaiman was like most goth kids. I was not goth, but I was like hanging out with those cool kids in the 90s. And there was a comic book series that was out by Vertigo, which I had no idea what the hell it was. I was so clueless about anything that wasn't Spider-Man related. It was called Sandman, and I was like, what is this weird-looking book? And they were like, oh, it's about this guy, and he's like the god of dreams and stuff like that. His name is Morpheus. And he controls, he's in the DC Comics, but he's just not hanging out with Superman and stuff. He would hang out with like Metamorpho and John Constantine, who I do an entire podcast about. Neil Gaiman introduced this character who I really got into called Death. And Death is this like punk goth looking girl based off of a songwriter that I remember him in interviews and stuff saying that he based it on. who is the sister of Death. The sister of Dream, Morpheus, the Sandman character. And it was called The High Cost of Living, where Death comes down to Earth for a day to experience life itself. And it is like highly beloved. The artwork in it is fantastic. There was a sequel to it that's not as good, but the Death High Cost of Living was like really prominent for me to understand what depression really is. And because of one of the main characters in it does suffer from like mental health problems. And a lot of Neil Gaiman's characters throughout Sandman have insane mental health problems. From everything from anxiety to depression to bipolarism to suicide, so on and so forth. And reading Sandman is a really good way of helping like deal with like understanding what a lot of those problems are, because Neil Gaiman's writing in anything, and not just Sandman, but anything, is like poetry in a way.
Including his poetry.
Including his poetry.
Are you familiar with any of his poetry?
I've not. I've heard about it, but I've never really like researched it in any way until someone mentions it, like you just did.
I have. See, that's the thing. Whereas most people are more familiar with Sandman and his more popular works and things like that, the stuff that I really love about him, like I love the novels that I've read from him that have just been amazing, but the poetry is what resonates most with me. I was just listening to on the train, actually. Excuse me. I have a couple. I have the An Evening with Amanda Palmer and Neil Gaiman, and it's part music, part poetry readings. There's a couple that are just poignant and just beautiful, and then there's some that are just silly but still kind of give you goosebumps, and those are genuinely my favorite. My absolute favorite one is The Day the Saucers Came.
Mm-hmm. Do you have it in front of you?
Oh, no. I'm not going to be able to give it a good read.
Damn, I was going to be like, could you read it to us?
No, because it's he has it on YouTube, I'm certain. But
okay.
His delivery of it is just beautiful. But like I've wanted to write music based off of these poems.
Oh.
Just from his poems alone. Some people in horror punk write music about horror movies, but for me, I want to write music about anything that really inspires me. Mm-hmm. If not, aside from the original stuff that I do, but if I'm ever gonna write like this is based on this, like I find more inspiration out of poetry than I do films. Mm-hmm. I don't know, but that's just me. Regardless, there's another one that's called My Last Landlady. That's also a reading that he did on that collection, and it's a ghost story about this like landlady person who, well, I don't want to give too much away, but it's one of those things where it's so subtle that if you didn't pay attention and really listen to his words, you'll miss the entire twist. And I love poems like that. They're so dynamic. Like, God, he just has such a wellspring of stuff. Like, it's not just novels, it's everything. Like, he's got his hands in every pie at this point, and I love it. That's probably why he's one of my favorite authors.
Yeah, and I feel really remiss that I have not read. I kept calling it Asgard, but I think it's called Norse Mythology is the name of the newest book that has just come out. And I mean, just came out. It came out in February. Just like Jess, I'm really busy, and I'm trying to read like one novel at a time, and even that's been like a really stretch for me. But it is available as an audiobook, and Neil reads it himself. So would you like to hear Neil Gaiman read to you for 500-something plus pages? Download Norse Mythology from wherever you can download audiobooks that you pay for. I heard it's awesome.
Well, obviously it hasn't come out yet, but the first novel of his that I actually quote read, I didn't actually read. I was gifted a CD collection of Neverwhere.
Oh.
And he was reading it, so I was like, this is amazing. It was one of the reasons why, like I said before, I fell in love with his writing, and it's his character. And so every time, because I heard Neverwhere read in his voice, every time that I read anything that isn't being read by him, I hear it in his voice, and it's awesome.
Did you ever see the Neverwhere miniseries that was on BBC?
No, I haven't yet.
That is, think you could still find it. It's not like on Netflix or anything like that, but man, was it like heavily circulated at like DVD stores and stuff like that. And I don't think it's ever gotten like an HD update release or anything. But I've heard it's really good. I've only ever read Neverwhere myself, so I haven't listened to the audio of it. Was that
awesome.
that one that you really, really connected to?
It was the first one, so obviously it's important to me.
Like Sandman to me. Yep.
My favorite one so far, because I've read, American Gods, Ocean at the End of the Lane is one that it's more recent of his. I've read parts of Fragile Things, Good Omens, but my absolute favorite is The Graveyard Book. That is one that I actually have written a song about. I just haven't fully realized it yet. Like it's written, it doesn't have all the chords to it yet or anything. I'm working on it, but that's the reason why I want to write one about the day the saucers came too. But I just want to make sure that Neil doesn't get angry and sue me.
I think anything that's an homage to him is totally fine.
Yeah, like loosely inspired by, because the concept with the Graveyard Book about how he read, how he took, it's an inspiration already because he based Graveyard Book off of Jungle Book. So he went Kipling and then said, okay, what if we set it in a graveyard? And I love that. So like, all right, well then why don't I take that book and base a song inspired by the book, and just the process continues, That's why I haven't done The Saucers Came, because that was an idea I literally just had today. Because I hadn't heard the poem in a while, but I just thought about it. I was like, oh, there's so much material there for horror punk. Like, it's such a horror punk song. Like, the poem, rather. It's such a horror punk poem. Like, zombies and robots and Ragnarok and, like, it's everything. But anyway, the Graveyard Book, how much it parallels to the Jungle Book. Boy being raised by ghosts instead of the jungle creatures. Just, I love the concept. It's amazing. Yeah,
and it was also huge when it came out because it was the first... it was the first of his books that had won the highest prestige award for a children's book he'd ever received. This award has gone to things like Jumanji, Where the Wild Things Are, stuff like that.
I had it...
It's also a comic book,
too. The
name
of the award, but I had a paperback version originally of The Graveyard Book, and I recently gave that copy to my boyfriend, actually, because when I was so sad when I found this. I found 7 or 8 different Gaiman books in a Goodwill, in a pile in a Goodwill.
Who are those people?
And so, of course, I bought all of them because I had to save the terror of the Goodwill pile. I'm like, no, you're gonna go to somebody who doesn't know you. So like, I bought like all of them, and so I was like, well, now I have a hardcover.
You're gonna come home with me, precious.
So I'm gonna give you the paperback.
Oh my God, Goodwill. Shame on those people. I mean, for all we know, they could have gone from somebody whose like house was, like left abandoned or whatever. We don't know the story, but if you gave away those books because you were tired of them, I'm pointing the shame finger at you.
Yeah, I just don't get it. I've never seen that many because it's like one of those Goodwills that's like a pay by the pound, like you never know what you're gonna get, kind of just here it is, go through it and figure out what you want. And like, so that means that definitely one person was like, nope, I'm over Neil Gaiman. And I was like, oh God, no.
There is a friend of mine who runs, are you familiar with Vampire the Masquerade, the live action role playing game?
Vaguely, I've heard of it, but I've never played it or anything.
It's like D&D, but you LARP it, you know what I mean, instead of like sitting at a table.
Yeah, I've heard it.
So he's my storyteller, and he got to go to Neil Gaiman's house and hang out with Neil Gaiman. And there's like all these pictures of him having dinner with Neil Gaiman and his wife, and they're like in the parlor. There are other people there, but it's not like this insanely crowd. I mean, like, I never asked him like the story about how the hell did that happen? Like, was it a contest or something, or you just happen to know the right people? But he is just like hanging out with Neil Gaiman like it ain't no thing. And I'm just like, I'm just losing my shit in my head looking at these pictures he's showing me. I was just, Neil Gaiman wrote one of the most uniquely weird stories for Marvel, which I was like, what? What is this? Wait, what? what is he doing? Because he's never written for Marvel Comics before. I mean, DC's always been his, like, you know, his bread and butter with Sandman and Death, and then he came back to Sandman a couple of years ago with Sandman Overture, and he wrote this story called 1602. Have you heard of this?
I have, actually. I picked up a couple copies of some, because I go to like used comic stores and all that sometimes, and
Yep.
they had like a two for one, like you can get a free comic of whatever's coming out, you know?
Yep.
And so obviously when I saw Neil, I was like, yes, I'm getting that one.
The artwork in this comic book is by one of the best artists in the industry, Adam, let me sure I don't confuse his name, Andy Kubert of the Kubert Brothers. And it's like, it's set in the year 1602, where there's like, oh wait, there's Doctor Strange, and he works for the Queen, and and there's like the leader of her Knights Templar Guard people are Sir Nicholas Fury, and his pupil, who's like his squire or whatever, is Peter Parker, and they're trying to stop this guy named the Goblin, who happens to be hanging out with Otto von Doom over in Latveria, and you're like, wow, there are all these like weird kind of 1602, the time period, of Marvel characters. And you don't understand what the hell is going on this entire story until you start realizing, why is there a tall, 7-foot blonde Native American standing around never talking? And his name is Roja. And then you find out his name is Steven Roja. And you're like, oh, why is Captain America? And then you find out it's a time travel story that has upset the fabric of space-time Doctor Who mumbo-jumbo that only Neil Gaiman could tell. And but until you figure out that the tall, white, blonde, blue-eyed Native American is Captain America, you don't know what the hell is going on in this story, other than it's pretty good.
I'm going to have to go back and find that comic, because I think I put it in the box of comics that I have, and I've kept it in its nice fancy seal, so I gotta go back in there.
It's good. I mean, again, you're just clueless, other than like, well, that's Thor, and that's the Fantastic Four, and that's Magneto and the X-Men. You kind of get that. The blind guy, that's obviously Daredevil. You're getting that, but you're still not figuring out what is the purpose of the story and what its connection. Oh, it's a complete screw-up of the space-time continuum because of Captain America time traveling by accident. That makes sense. And again, it's just like, but you're gripped by the artwork and the writing and the storytelling and like, what other Marvel character am I going to recognize is going to show up? You know what I mean? And they're only using the Marvel characters from like the Silver Age and the Golden Age. So only like the original X-Men, not Wolverine, not Colossus. They're using like original characters, the Hulk and so on and so forth, Doctor Doom and Dr. Octopus. So they're making it characters that everyone will recognize, not getting too obscure. And Neil Gaiman wrote it fantastically. There was then he wrote something called The Elementals, which I never read, which are extremely obscure Marvel characters. I don't know anything about them at all, but if you want to know who they are, they're kind of like callovers from Jack Kirby. Jack Kirby was the co-creator of most everything you know about comic books, and Neil Gaiman did a miniseries with John Romita Jr., best known for drawing Spider-Man. So you had one of the best Spider-Man artists in the industry working with one of the best science fiction writers in the industry, Neil Gaiman, to create a miniseries based on one of the most obscure group of characters in the industry. Success. There was, I'm trying to bring it up right now, but it's taking forever for this stupid thing. Oh my god. Okay, here we go. Now, did you ever hear about the controversy with one of Neil Gaiman's creations in the battle with Spawn creator Todd McFarlane?
Not at all.
Angela was this bikini-clad warrior angel bounty hunter, because all the women in heaven wear basically Princess Leia-style outfits from Return of the Jedi. And he was created by Neil Gaiman. Now, the stipulation in Image Comics is you create the character, you own the character. Neil Gaiman created Angela in Spawn number 9. He owns that character. According to Tom McFarlane, though, it was created in his book. He owns the character. Lawsuit went on for 10 years.
Jeez.
Yes, they had to kill off Angela in Spawn in issue number 100. She got sliced down the middle by the Malbogia in one of the most like, oh yeah, she's definitely dead kind of moments. Eventually, Neil Gaiman, of course, won because, well, yeah, that's what Image's original contract was when you signed. You create the character, you own the character. Doesn't matter whose book's it in. And Angela was, now I don't know if Neil Gaiman still owns the character or not, but she currently hangs out with a talking raccoon and a talking tree. And they have a film coming out next month, Guardians of the Galaxy. She is one of those. But Neil Gaiman partly wrote like her introduction into the Marvel Universe, where she just like appears. Long story short, I'm not getting an explanation why it happened, but she appears in the Marvel Universe, and she eventually learns in a storyline called Original Sin, where this like Eye of Knowledge blows up in front of the Marvel heroes, and they all find out about secrets about their past they had forgotten about. Trauma, basically. And one of the secrets Thor found out about is he has a sister, and that sister is Angela.
Huh.
Yes. And they also find out there's not just 9 realms, there are 10 realms of the Tree of Asgard, which, by the way, Neil Gaiman explains a lot in his Norse mythology book. The 10th realm, which is only in Marvel Comics, by the way, is heaven. And Odin went to heaven, got busy with an angel, and they had a kid. So Angela is Thor's half-sister and Loki's half-sister.
Mind blown.
I know, right? And only Neil Gaiman could come up with that. Because if anyone else had written that, we'd be like, oh, you fucking kidding me? But because it's Neil Gaiman, we're all like, You have to admit, though, that some of his stuff is so out there and so off the wall that if someone else had come up with it, we'd all kind of roll our eyes just a little bit.
I don't know. I mean, it's just so well orchestrated. Like
Coraline.
Yeah.
Like, Coraline is so weird. The book and the movie are so out of this world.
Well, I mean, look at Alice in Wonderland. I mean, come on. If you're really going to talk about, like, young girl who goes and follows, you know, a creature into a tunnel, into another realm.
Oh my god, I just never realized. I swear to God, I just suddenly realized that's like... Oh my god, I never even thought about that.
I'm sure that people said the same thing with Carol.
Oh, good lord. Yes, according to at least Wikipedia, Angela is still owned by Neil Gaiman and licensed to the Disney Corporation for Marvel Comics. Now, by the way, once she became a Marvel character, she started wearing a corset underneath that chainmail bikini Princess Leia looking outfit. By the way, I'm just going to point that out. In Image Universe, bikini made of gold with all of her goods showing. In the Marvel Universe, she wears a corset underneath it. Still kind of ridiculous looking outfit that, you know, Vampirella would wear, but yeah, notice they kind of changed it to give the Disney look. I don't think she's going to be appearing in any movies anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't think so.
No, but you could definitely tell how Disney decided to look at her outfit and go, so that's her costume. Boots and a bikini, huh? Yeah, you got to stick something else on that woman because we are not putting her in But we're going to put her in a book with a talking raccoon, a talking tree, and a green warrior woman who wears almost the same thing.
Basically.
Yeah. Neil was great about taking other people's stories and revamping them in such ways that were very unique to our to his own, and he did that fantastically in one of the greatest written Alan Moore stories. Are you familiar with Alan Moore, Jess?
No, I'm not.
He wrote V for Vendetta, Watchmen, and From Hell.
Well, I know those.
Okay, and he wrote
I'm bad with names.
Okay, and he wrote the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. The comic books, not the movie. But unfortunately, he's also one of those writers that if he doesn't like the property, he doesn't want his name on it. And none of the properties that I have just mentioned to you have his name on it, except for League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, only because that was the first one Hollywood did, and he was like, take my fucking name off of that thing. So whenever you watch Watchmen or V for Vendetta, it's only going to have created by the artist, not Alan Moore. And he wrote a story in 1987 called Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, which was the death of the Silver Age Superman before they rebooted Superman due to the Crisis on Infinite Earths. Neil Gaiman years later wrote a story to tie into Batman Rest in Peace and Final Crisis called Whatever Happened to the Caped Crusader, which was a basically a very similar story to this, where people ask the question, whatever happened to Batman? Because Batman had disappeared at this point in the DC canon. And it was a 2-issue Batman story to fill in a gap, which didn't make any sense between Rest in Peace and Final Crisis. Both were written by a guy named Grant Morrison, which, if you're ever at your local comic book store, Jess, I highly recommend picking up something called Superman All-Star. It is considered one of the greatest comic book stories ever written, if also one of the greatest Superman stories ever written, that anyone can get into without having to worry about, 75 years of continuity. Like, who Superman is, you can read this story. That's it. You know what I mean? But this Whatever Happened to the Caped Crusader is kind of one of those bogged down in continuity stories that you cannot read if you do not know anything about what's going on in Batman's life at the time. But Neil Gaiman wrote it. It's kind of an unusual story for him because it's not his typical kind of fare. You know what I mean? Now, did you ever see Stardust or read the book?
I have read Stardust and I saw the film, yeah.
What did you think about that? Because I've only ever seen the movie.
I like the book better. I like a lot of things. There's just more detail. There's certain things that were slightly altered and changed as they usually do when they transfer from book to film. But it's such a cute concept and such a heartwarming type of thought that shooting star isn't actually a shooting star. It's a girl falling from the skies to land and now she's just trying to find her love. Fix her leg too. Yeah, it's adorable.
Whoa!
Yeah, it's just it's a really heartwarming concept, and I am really glad that because when you're a kid you think about those things, like a shooting star is something that seems commonplace, but for some, for someone to have that the thought of, well, what could it be instead of just that? Let's take something that is known as this and turn it on its side and create something completely new out of it. It's just that mythos. I love it.
Was there anything about the film that you didn't like? Because a lot of people did not like the movie.
I don't know. Like I said, I like the movie. You take it with a grain of salt because it's just different from the book. There's gonna be things that are gonna be cut out. It was a while ago when I saw it as well. So
the trailer for American Gods, which starts on Starz or Amazon Prime as well, and I think you can catch the first episode on Starz' website. I think they do free streaming, but you'd have to double check. It looks so weird. It looks so out of this world. There's a comic book series that just started from Dark Horse, and the novel, of course, is out at all the bookstores once again. That's the one thing about Neil Gaiman stuff. His stuff has never been out of print. It's all out there to find. But American Gods looks outrageously weird. I can't even describe it. I'm so looking forward to it. Excuse me. I'm so looking forward to it just because of the I've only read the novel one time a long time ago. And the book was published in 2001, so I read it about 16 years ago when it first came out. Because I had read Sandman, and then I didn't read anything about Neil Gaiman after that. I don't know what he did between the ending of Sandman and American Gods, but I hadn't read anything, and then I was at the bookstore and was like, what's this? Neil Gaiman writes books too? I think that might have been one of his first books published, because he had only been a comic book writer for a number of years, and then started writing novels, and then has only done comic books sporadically. But novels have been his big bread and butter. Yeah,
I think he had other... I can't remember the specific project, but I'm pretty sure he had at least a couple before that.
The central premise of the novel, for anyone not familiar with it, is gods and mythological creatures exist because people believe in them. It's a form of thought form, and immigrants to the United States are brought with them spirits and gods, and the power of the mythological beings has diminished as people's beliefs have waned, which is kind of the way in most beliefs of things. And the TV series Supernatural touches upon this a lot, and I guarantee that they probably got this from Gaiman's writing, because I hadn't heard about this happening before 2001 when this novel was published. They fight, Sam and Dean fights gods that are constantly trying to strive for new... What's the word I'm looking for, Jess? When you do something for a god, not sacrifice. Offering. Thank you. Offering. And one of the best episodes they actually reference, I think they reference American Gods in a very slight way, is Sam and Dean are fighting wax museum characters that a god is transforming into because people worship celebrities more than they worship, like, God himself or something. And God turns into Paris Hilton at the end.
That's funny.
Because she was one of the biggest celebrities at the time the episode aired. Now Paris Hilton nobody cares about because thankfully it stopped being a tabloid, attraction. But at the time Paris Hilton was like a huge thing. This was like 2009 or 8 when this episode aired. And Paris Hilton played herself in the episode because she could take a joke. And they made it, they say that, like, they say, really, Paris Hilton? They're like, well, the god in Paris Hilton's body says something about, like, this is all anyone follows is tabloid trash. And they could not believe they actually were able to get Paris Hilton to play a caricature of herself. They thought her reps was like, no, but she was like, I will totally do that. But I guarantee it had to come from this kind of like Neil Gaiman book, which is where the gods are trying to find new ways to be represented and loved. Neil Gaiman, I didn't even realize had created the character until I was like, I've been rereading Sandman recently. I was at my local comic book store and they had every volume of Sandman for $5, and I was like, sold. I will buy those. And it was like $50, so I got all 10 volumes. And I didn't realize that the character Lucifer was created. Well, the DC Comics universe, Lucifer was created in Sandman, and now he has his own TV series where he hangs out with a hot cop and they solve crimes, and that's apparently nothing to do with Neil Gaiman's interpretation of the character.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the show. I think I saw the trailers were popping up when that X-Files remount was going on. That's like the extent of me knowing about that show.
It's okay. If you got, I think it's on Netflix. It's all right. But if you, again, having never read Lucifer or Sandman, you could probably get into it. But as like me who has read it, I'm kind of like, this is okay, but this is not Neil Gaiman's Lucifer. Because Lucifer in the comics does not solve crimes like a cop. All of the character settings and the characters that Neil Gaiman's created are in the show, but again, they turned it into like a cop drama.
Because that's what we need.
Well, they put it back to back with Gotham. Gotham is a cop drama set, before Batman is created. So that might have been their mentality about why doing it. But I think if they had turned Lucifer into its own show, like the way Neil Gaiman did it, I guarantee if American Gods is that successful, they will be revamping Lucifer tremendously. Lucifer Morningstar. Also, he doesn't look anything like the way he does in the comics. In the comics, he's I'm trying to find where it says Gaiman based Lucifer off of. I want to say it was Sting, but that's John Constantine. Lucifer, though, has John Constantine's look, where he's like tall, British, and blonde, and the Lucifer on the show is British and with like black hair and really black eyes, like normal black eyes, not black demon eyes. But he's like a blonde hair, blue eyed, smoking hot kind of supermodel in the comic book. Because he's Lucifer. He's supposed to be good looking. Women are supposed to fall all over him and stuff like that because that's the way he was written. Because he has the powers to do that. You know what I mean? He's got the vampire stare power. It's been I think one of the most controversial interpretations of Gaiman's work is Lucifer. And for years they have been trying to make Sandman into something, and they've never been able to get it off a script. It's just been script. And I know it's like constant question to Neil Gaiman from like video interviews I've seen him do and like panels and stuff like that. And he's always been like, I have no idea what they're doing with it. I mean, I get like word that it's going to happen every 5 minutes and it doesn't happen. But when I started getting into Metallica and I heard that Metallica song, I immediately thought of Neil Gaiman. But you got to think, big company like Warner Brothers, they make all those Harry Potter movies. They're apparently financing a whole television series based on Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicles. How hard is it to get a Sandman movie into development? Was there another book of Neil Gaiman's that you wanted to mention?
Trying to remember.
You sent me a list.
Those are really the main ones that I've had and that I've been, as avidly obsessed with. I've read Graveyard Book 3 times.
Did you know there was a graphic novel?
I'm aware of it. I haven't, I don't have it, but yeah.
I remember when there was... Oh, you read Ocean.
Ocean at the End of the Lane, yes.
Okay, all right, we'll get right to that. When Graveyard Book came out, I was working at a Borders at the time, when Borders was still around. Borders was so awesome. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. This whole, like, this kid's going to live with, like a witch, and it's like a witch, a ghost, and a vampire, right?
Kinda, yeah.
Okay, so then, like, at the same time, there was a BBC series debuting, which eventually got turned into an American show called Being Human, about a vampire, a ghost, and a werewolf that live together.
I've seen the BBC version.
The American version is not... It's not bad.
It's not good.
No, it's not. Oh, it's not good.
I'm biased because I want the original, and the BBC version is so much better.
Of course. I like both, but I couldn't help compare the two to Neil Gaiman's book as well, and I was like, oh, this is weird. These are all coming out at the same time, and both are British.
Yeah, it definitely follows like a similar, at least with the three of them. But I mean, obviously they don't have Bod.
Yeah,
so.
they don't have the kid. But man, I would love to see that made into. I think as a live action movie that would be terrible if they cannot get the right boy actor. You know what I mean? Because children actors are terrible. They suck.
Not all children actors. Come on now.
The Stranger Things kids are the exception, okay?
Well, I mean, he's older now. He's like my age now, but like Freddie Highmore was just brilliant when he was a little boy.
But who?
He's brilliant now.
But you have to admit, they would need a superiorly powerful kid actor to play the main character, right?
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, I wish that there was a time machine, because baby Freddie Highmore would be the most perfect fit for that. But now he's, older in Bates Motel, and now he's killing people, so.
Oh, that's right. That's him. Okay, I'm like.
He's still adorable, but he's, like, killing people in an adorable way.
You're saying this name, and I'm like, why do I...
In my mind, I still see the kid from Finding Neverland,
Oh my god, that was him. That's right. For whatever reason, when you said...
James... I think he was in James and the Giant Peach, too, was he?
Was he the voice, you mean?
No, well, I mean, there's live action in the beginning of the film. I can't remember. I want to say that he was. But, anyway.
God, you said James and the Giant Peach, by the way. It reminds me of some Little Mermaid rehearsal thing that I once saw. Yes, Bates Motel is really great, but, God, the kid still looks like he's 12 years old in that show.
He does, which is why it's funny watching him kill people. But anyway, like, as far as child actors would go, we're all saying, that the kids in Stranger Things are awesome, but, like, I'm telling you, there are amazing child actors. It's just a matter of them getting the right roles. Because too many times, especially nowadays, they cast kids and they expect them, as far as the script is concerned, to do stereotypical kid things. And that's why I feel like Stranger Things is so good, because they have them in real, more, like, not grown up, but, like, more realistic situations, reacting the way a kid that age really would react, and I was a teacher for a little while. I did after school programs and things like that, and I know how kids nowadays do act in these situations, and they're not going to be like, they're way more mature now than a 6-year-old was back then, just because they're exposed to a lot more things. So, I don't know, I feel like, the live-action version of Graveyard Book would be phenomenal, and I have every faith that there would be a phenomenal person to play Bod.
Phenomenal. Phenomenal. Right? No? That just...
Sure.
You didn't get my reference?
No, I did.
Okay. I was going to suggest maybe the Laki, L-A-K-A-I. The people who did Paranorman and Coraline and recently Kubo and the Two Strings, they should do the Graveyard Book.
Sure.
just in terms of like it not being a live action production. If they wanted to do it animated. And I know a lot of people have, constantly asked them at like conventions and stuff when they do panels, like, "Oh, you're gonna do another Neil Gaiman story?" And they're like, "We wanted to do that one time to start us off, but we'd like to do other stories, and not just be like known as the Neil Gaiman Company that produces his stuff, but just doing one other title would not make you the Neil Gaiman Company. You established yourself with like Box Trolls and Paranorman, so." I'm hoping American Gods does well. I want to reread the book. I know the book has been, again, transformed into a comic book series by Dark Horse, or it's a prequel to the show. I'm not sure yet, but it's definitely worth picking up if you can. We have a really good relationship with Dark Horse Comic Books here at Radio of Horror, so maybe they would be kind enough to send us over a couple copies to read eventually. That would be pretty cool, huh, Jess? Well, again, you can go to your local bookstore, used bookstore, Annie's Bookstop, Barnes & Noble, I don't know what cool bookstores are in New York City, to find copies of Neil Gaiman's books. Is there any great bookstore that you would recommend?
Strand.
The Strand, yes, absolutely. Oh my God, I completely forgot about that. That is one of the most popular, well-known used bookstores in New York. And check out American Gods on Starz' website. And that's pretty much all the time we have here on Radio of Horror for our discussion about Neil Gaiman. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Jess-O-Lantern.
Thank you.